This isn't a deleted scene from an action movie, it's London, 1952. Fog, routine traffic, and a red double-decker minding its business. On December 30th, bus driver Albert Gunter was guiding his number 78 across Tower Bridge like he had done countless times before. Just another shift, just another crossing over the Thames. Except this time the bridge had other plans. Tower Bridge isn't just a pretty postcard, it's a drawbridge. The road splits into two massive sections called bascules. When a ship needs to pass, they rise dramatically into the air. Each one weighs over 1,000 tons and can tilt to a steep angle. That morning, the warning system failed. The gates didn't close in time, the signals didn't stop traffic properly, and Gunter's bus rolled forward just as the bascule beneath him began to lift. Imagine the road beneath your wheels slowly turning into a ramp. He was moving at around 12 miles per hour. Not fast, not slow, just enough to be dangerous. Behind him, passengers. Below him, the River Thames. Ahead of him, a gap opening like the mouth of a mechanical giant. He had seconds. Option 1. Slam the brakes and risk the bus rolling backward down the rising slope and possibly into the river. Option 2. Accelerate and try to clear the widening gap before the other side lifted too high. No committee meeting, no time for doubt, just instinct. He pressed the accelerator. The double-decker climbed the rising bascule, launched into the air, and cleared a gap of several feet before slamming down onto the other side. For a brief moment, London had public transport with wings. 13 passengers were injured, shaken, bruised, stunned, but every single one survived. The ship passed underneath as intended. The bridge completed its elegant opening. And somewhere in the middle of all that steel and river and chaos, a bus had performed a stunt that would sound exaggerated even in fiction. Albert Gunter didn't wear a cape. He wore a driver's uniform and made a split-second decision that kept dozens of people alive. London traffic can be dramatic, but rarely does it involve flight. For a few seconds, a London bus stopped being a bus. It became a gamble on wheels, suspended between river and sky. And that's the thing about history. Every so often, it forgets to behave. Roads tilt. Bridges open too soon. Ordinary people are forced into extraordinary decisions. But Tower Bridge wasn't finished being dramatic. The hoax that paralyzed London. Long before spam emails and crashing servers, London experienced something far stranger. In 1810, a man named Theodore Hook decided he was bored. Not mildly bored, historically bored. So he made a bet. Hook claimed he could turn any ordinary house into the most talked-about address in London within a single week. No fame, no scandal, no crime, just paper, ink, and audacity. He chose a random home on Berners Street, a quiet residence occupied by an unsuspecting woman named Mrs. Tottingham. Then he got to work. Hook wrote hundreds, possibly thousands of letters. He invited dignitaries. He ordered goods. He summoned services. All in Mrs. Tottingham's name. Chimney sweeps, doctors, lawyers, priests, musicians, bakers, coal deliveries, wedding cakes, furniture, coffins. Yes, coffins. At dawn on November 27th, the doorbell began ringing. And it did not stop. One chimney sweep arrived, then another, then dozens. Deliveries piled up. Carriages jammed the street. Curious onlookers gathered. Confusion thickened like London fog. By mid-morning, traffic was gridlocked. The spectacle had spread beyond tradesmen. High-ranking officials arrived, responding to personal invitations. Even the Lord Mayor of London showed up. Imagine opening your door in your nightgown and finding half the city waiting for instructions you never gave. Berners Street became a human traffic jam, a social avalanche triggered by ink. Hook and his friend watched from a rented room nearby, enjoying the chaos as it unfolded like a live theatre production. There was no hacking, no explosives, no violence, just one man weaponizing stationery. In modern terms, he essentially launched a denial-of-service attack on a physical street, a real-world glitch powered entirely by confidence and postage. Eventually, authorities restored order. The embarrassment lingered longer than the carriages. And somewhere in the archives of London's long, dramatic history, there remains a reminder. Never underestimate what a bored genius with a pen can do. If you're enjoying these moments where history feels slightly glitched, Take a second right now to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because the deeper we dig, the stranger it gets, and you don't want to miss the next story that sounds impossible but actually happened. The woman who dared the Niagara Falls. At 63 years old, most people are thinking about retirement. Annie Edson Taylor was thinking about velocity. In 1901, the widowed schoolteacher looked at Niagara Falls and saw not just a natural wonder, but a financial lifeline. She believed one unforgettable stunt could secure her future. Her plan was brutally simple. Climb into a custom wooden barrel padded with a mattress, seal it shut, let the river decide the rest. On October 24, 1901, her barrel was released into the current. It spun like driftwood with ambition, inching closer to the roar. Then it tipped over the edge and vanished into 170 feet of crashing white fury. The crowd waited. Minutes later, the barrel resurfaced below the falls and was dragged to shore. When it was opened, Annie was alive, bruised, dazed, slightly bleeding, but breathing. She became the first person to survive plunging over Niagara Falls in a barrel. Not because it was safe, not because it was wise, but because physics allowed a narrow margin for survival. Fame followed. Fortune did not. Promoters failed her. Her manager reportedly ran off with the very barrel that made her famous. She spent years trying to turn history into income, but the riches she hoped for never truly arrived. History gave her headlines and kept the paycheck. Still, she proved something unforgettable. When the world saw danger, she saw opportunity. When others heard thunder, she climbed inside it. The plane that landed without a pilot. In 2005, something chilling unfolded above the skies of Greece. Helios Airways. Flight 522 took off normally from Cyprus, bound for Prague with a scheduled stop in Athens. Routine departure. Clear skies. Nothing unusual. But shortly after takeoff, the aircraft began losing cabin pressure. Inside the cockpit, warning alarms sounded. Oxygen masks deployed in the cabin. The air thinned quietly, invisibly. Hypoxia set in. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like confusion, drowsiness, fog creeping into the brain. The crew became incapacitated, the passengers too. And yet the aircraft kept flying. The Boeing 737 was on autopilot. It followed its programmed route with machine-like obedience, climbing, cruising, turning exactly as instructed. For hours it drifted over Athens, waiting for landing clearance that would never come. Greek fighter jets were scrambled to intercept. What they saw was surreal. The co-pilot slumped over the controls. Oxygen masks dangling. Cabin still. A commercial jet moving through the sky with no one consciously steering it. A flying machine with no one truly at the helm. Eventually, fuel ran low. Engines flamed out one by one. The aircraft descended and crashed near the village of Grammatico. All 121 people on board lost their lives. For a long stretch of sky that day, the plane became something haunting. Not out of malice, not out of chaos. Just systems continuing their task long after the humans had fallen silent. It was not a hijacking, not a storm, not an explosion. It was a quiet failure of pressurization that turned a passenger jet into a ghost ship in the clouds. The lake that was swallowed by a mine. In 1980, Lake Peigneur in Louisiana was a small, calm, freshwater lake. It was only about 10 feet deep. People fished there. Boats floated peacefully. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. But under the lake was something huge. A massive salt mine operated by Diamond Crystal Salt Company stretched deep underground. It had tunnels and large rooms carved out of solid salt. The lake was sitting right above this hidden mine. On November 21, 1980, a drilling rig owned by Texaco was searching for oil on the lake's surface. The crew made a small mistake in their calculations. They drilled in the wrong spot. The drill bit punched through the roof of the salt mine below. As soon as that happened, water from the lake began rushing down into the mine. At first, it looked like a strong current. Then it turned into a giant whirlpool. The water started draining fast, like someone had pulled the plug from a bathtub. The drilling rig tilted and then disappeared into the spinning water. 11 barges nearby were pulled in. A tugboat was swallowed. Even trees and pieces of land collapsed into the growing hole. The the situation became even stranger. The hole grew so large that it changed the direction of the Del Cambra Canal, which connects the lake to the Gulf of Mexico. For the only time in history, water from the Gulf flowed backward. A waterfall formed, pouring inland into the huge crater. Underground, the salt walls began to dissolve quickly as fresh water filled the mine. Tunnels collapsed. The land above sank deeper and deeper. But here is the most unbelievable part. No one died. The miners working underground managed to escape in time. The workers on the rig got off safely. The sailors abandoned their boats before they were pulled under. Even though the destruction was massive, every person survived. When it was over, Lake Peigneur was no longer the same. It became much deeper and turned salty because of the water from the Gulf. What started as a small math mistake turned a quiet lake into a giant vortex. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, everyone made it out alive. The man who stayed awake for 40 years. During World War I, a Hungarian soldier named Paul Kern was fighting on the front lines in 1915. In the middle of battle, he was shot in the temple by a Russian soldier. The bullet destroyed part of his frontal lobe. Most men with that kind of injury would have died instantly. Kern did not. He survived the surgery. He recovered. But something strange had changed. He could no longer sleep. At first, doctors assumed it was temporary. After such a severe brain injury, the body often reacts in unpredictable ways. But days passed, then weeks, then months. Paul Kern never fell asleep. What makes the story even more unbelievable is this. He did not seem to suffer the normal effects of sleep deprivation. He did not go insane. He did not collapse from exhaustion. He did not experience constant hallucinations or mental breakdowns, which usually happen when someone stays awake for too long. Doctors were confused. Sleep is considered essential for survival. Most people begin to suffer serious physical and psychological damage after just a few days without it. Yet Kern claimed he simply could not sleep, even if he tried. Instead of lying awake in frustration, he adapted. While the rest of the world slept, he read books. He wrote. He worked quietly through the night. He reportedly rested by lying down with his eyes closed for a couple of hours, but he said he never truly slept. He went on living this way for decades. Paul Kern died in 1955. If the story is true as reported at the time, he lived about 40 years without sleep. That would mean he experienced almost twice the waking hours of an average person. His case remains controversial, and modern sleep science questions whether complete sleeplessness for that long is biologically possible. Still, the legend of the man who never slept continues to puzzle people. A bullet meant to end his life may have rewritten it instead. While the world drifted into dreams each night, Paul Kern stayed awake, watching the hours pass in silence. The car that was cursed. In 1955, rising Hollywood actor James Dean died in a tragic car crash while driving his silver Porsche 550 Spider. He was only 24 years old. The car had a nickname painted on it, Little Bastard. The crash alone was enough to shock the world, but according to many stories, the tragedy did not end there. The car's wreckage seemed to carry a dark reputation long after Dean's death. After the accident, parts of the Porsche were sold. The engine was reportedly bought by a doctor who installed it into his own racing car. During a race, he lost control of the vehicle and was killed. Another driver who had purchased other parts from Dean's car was seriously injured around the same time. The strange events continued. At one point, the damaged Porsche was stored in a garage. The building later caught fire and burned down. Some accounts claim that the car itself suffered little damage from the blaze. In another incident, while the car was being transported on a truck, it allegedly fell off and crushed the legs of a mechanic standing nearby. Then came the final mystery. In 1960, what remained of the Porsche was placed inside a sealed shipping container and sent from Miami to Los Angeles. Somewhere along the journey, it disappeared. The container was opened, but the car was gone. It has never been officially found. Over the years, the story of the cursed car has grown. Some believe these events were tragic coincidences that became exaggerated over time. Others see a pattern that feels too strange to ignore. What is certain is this: James Dean's death turned both the actor and his car into legends. And while Dean's fame lives on in film history, the fate of Little Bastard remains one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button. It really helps the channel grow. If you want more strange and unbelievable true stories, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.